Well, hey everybody, welcome to Nerd Rat Media's attempt at doing like a review show. We're doing something new here. We're trying it out. It's the first thing ever where we get to talk about movies because we love movies.
Did you see that? Did you get that on film?
I'm Jesse.
I'm Sean.
We are the main guys behind Nerd Rat. We work with a lot of cats locally here up in northern Colorado, but more than anything, we're always just trying to make cool stuff. So that means that we like to look for and watch cool and weird stuff. And today, we wanted to talk about a goofy movie, actually. We are seeing that the next installation of Magic Mike is coming out.
Very excited.
Very excited. Magic Mike Last Dance is coming out, or it's already out, I think. I've had some people that have already reviewed it. And Steven Soderbergh is actually the director of that film. And we thought we would kind of talk about some of his older films, specifically this surreal experimental comedy that we just watched called, what is it? Schizopolis. Schizopolis. I think I got that right. This movie is a goofy movie.
Yeah.
And
definitely really enjoyed this one. It's, yeah.
And as you can
very
tell,
out there.
got it on a VHS too. Happened to come across it a couple years back. Hadn't had a chance to watch it yet, so we decided to watch it this morning, and it was a blast. It was a fun ride.
Yeah. Laughed throughout the entire thing. When did it come out?
96. Yeah, 96, just give a little history on that real quick. Came out in 1996. Steven Soderbergh not only directed this film, but he also wrote it, and he also stars in it and has like several versions of himself in this movie. Premiered at Cannes, played at TIFF, and there's a bunch of references to things that if you watch it now and you don't know a bunch about movies, you might not even know what he's referencing.
Yeah.
You might even not know what he's referencing because of these weird 90s references like the subway reference and stuff like that.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, there's a little bit of spoiler alert in this.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
We will be going over pretty much the entire thing and showing you some clips.
I think we're past the point of like, it's not a new movie. So
Nah.
we're not, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But we're going to be talking about it.
1996, man. It's 40 years ago coming up. Get on the horse, y'all. Let's kind of talk about this goofy movie. First, let me give you a brief history on Steven Soderbergh. Mostly like he's making a Magic Mike movie. Great, awesome, but he has a huge history of films. He's made films such as Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Out of Sight, Aaron Brockovich, Traffic, The Che, Part 1 and Part 2, The Informant, Contagion, Logan Lucky. Man, he's made a lot of films. He's made a lot of good movies.
I didn't really realialize that until I was reading that list.
Yeah, right? Seriously.
It's like, Traffic is like, kind of an intense movie.
It's it, but he's got such a wide variety. He reminds me of like Danny Boyle almost, where they can just do all kinds of films, and he's one of my favorite directors too. And I don't think Soderbergh really gets the recognition that he deserves,
Do you know if he writes these ones as well, or is he just getting come on like as a director?
It depends. A lot of these, and I don't have my phone out, my cheat sheet or anything, but there's a lot of stuff where he also produces it so he can keep like creative control on it too.
Yeah.
I know that a few of these he did write, and you comment on it, but I think he did The Informant. He wrote The Informant. I think he also wrote the script for Aaron Brockovich. I might be talking out my butt right now, but whatever. The fact is this guy's an awesome creative. Came up in the 90s, which really kind of shows up in this film.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Specifically, so many 90s tropes that if we try to do it in our own things now, people be like saying it. But back then it was fresh. It was hot. Like he was doing all kinds of references. There's even that cutaway joke where they just like literally do a whole scene that's just a reference to pissing like a racehorse.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
I'm just going to make this brief statement on behalf of ARHADL. The spreading of these erroneous and offensive descriptions has gone on for decades, and we find ourselves once again having to make a public statement. Racehorses do not urinate more frequently or at greater length than non-racing horses, or, for that matter, any mammal of comparable size. This organized, publicly sanctioned slander must stop.
This film has like several different things. It's got all these different storylines going on, which is a commonplace thing today, but back then it was an extremely experimental way to make films. But man, if you watch even a Marvel film now, they've got like 1,000 timelines going on.
Out of order and like out of time too. Like, it's even hard to describe because it does kind of confuse you.
It tries
until the very end. But the disclaimer at the very beginning where he says like, if you're confused by this movie, it's not our fault.
Yeah.
It's entirely on you as the viewer.
Yeah.
In the event that you find certain sequences or ideas confusing, please bear in mind that this is your fault, not ours. You will need to see the picture again and again until you understand everything. return.
And also a beautiful thing to bring up about that whole thing, that intro and outro thing, and I just looked it up, and I didn't know this till recently, and I owned the movie. Basically, the famous director Cecil B., who did the Ten Commandments movie, and he did a bunch of movies back in the day. And even there's that movie Cecil B. Demented that came out like in the late 90s. We gotta watch it sometime.
Okay,
it's amazing.
yeah.
It's amazingly stupid. It's whatever. It's fun. It has Steven Dorff in it. Sure. Anyways, the opening scene to Ten Commandments, Cecil B. Mill actually comes out and talks to the audience and kind of describes it in a similar way. Okay. And that confusing line is kind of a reference to him being like, if you aren't like really understanding what's going on here, it's like, it's the fucking Bible. Yeah. Shit's crazy.
It's your fault.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
But it's the thing about it though is that it kind of plays into the aesthetic that we're about to receive in the movie, and it also does this like weird, like, you don't have to understand the references, and we didn't really fully. They were just doing their thing and it works out. Right. So like, that's just like, I guess that's a lesson learned. If you're out there making films and you're worried that someone's not going to give you a reference, don't beat it into their head. Just do a simple version of the reference. Yeah. I'm sure it'll be hilarious. Yeah. And then you can write in the description on Wikipedia 40 years later that it was
the weird trivia.
Yeah, the weird trivia, whatever. At this
IMDb
point,
page.
Yeah, make people look for it. Make people hunt for it. Yeah, so going on, a couple things I wanted to bring up before I got like a little list going on here. But man, the things that we kind of like just to touch on real quick is like that we'll get into is like the overall 90s the indie cinema vibe that this thing's putting out there.
And Enema Cinema.
Enema Cinema, it really gets in there on you. Damn it. Busted. Over here talking. We also got like fourth wall breaks all over the place. A lot of masturbation going on. And I think that's just like a thing you got to do to like show how like serious you are about filmmaking, I feel like in the 90s. There's a lot of like weird masturbation references through this whole thing.
Right, yeah. And like how depressing your life is.
Yeah. So like you got to go like pull one out in the bathroom, I guess, to like get it off your mind.
You'd rather masturbate than like be with your wife kind of thing.
Exactly. And that thing. And then like also like the overall lead up to that one joke that's actually a decent delivery. Like, what are you doing? Jerking off all day? And he's like, well, actually kind of.
Was that in part 2? Because they actually like label the parts in the kind of a fun way, so you know exactly what act you're in, just in case you were confused. They let you know.
Yeah, because at some point when they throw the one out there, you're like, oh wait, that was Act 1 that we just watched. Oh my god, what a hell of a setup. but that's a beautiful thing too. And then like to keep going down, just to kind of keep breezing, just as a couple of things here. There's a few Magic Mike moments in this. We like to point out, like, so there is a connection in the long run. It's a silly connection, but
it's far-reaching.
It's far-reaching, but you know, if you like men's asses, you definitely gotta get a few of them in this film.
And a little full frontal.
A little full frontal.
Right at the very end.
Actually, there's a moment in there in the middle that you can see him on the bike for a second. Sure, yeah. But you know, who's looking? You know what I mean? Who's staring?
It's on VHS, so it's just a little blur.
It might just be like a tracking problem, to be honest with you. You know, and then and they got like a bunch of time lapse shots in there, 4 or 5 different timelines going on, and those are just kind of like some touches on, and we'll kind of get into those a little bit. But this it was fun. Like we were laughing through the whole thing. So what I was going to do, because it gives people a little bit of a premise idea here, is I'm going to be real lame, and I'm just going to straight up read the IMDb description of this film, because it does a decent draw up of like what you're kind of about to see here. I'll give you the shortened version because there's a long version here too. So Fletcher Munson, the lethargic employee of a pseudo-religious self-help company, which they compare to Scientology in the description here, which I didn't really catch fully in the movie. Yeah. It's loosely thrown in there. And his doppelganger, the friendly but dull dentist, Dr. Jeffrey Korchek. And that's the short version. And the long one has some other things in there where they kind of describe the doppelganger and like how he's writing the speech for the basically the leader of the Scientology church. You know what I mean?
Now I'm seeing it because there's like lots of posters of him like with his arms out with his like little smile, like he's welcoming you into his. I see the religion side. I just thought he was like a weird CEO.
Right. No, I thought he was doing like TED Talks, but TED Talks weren't really around in like 1996. So because they keep cutting to him like on a stage talking to a crowd.
Right.
But he wasn't really talking religion. He was talking very like CEO.
Yeah. Was it eventualism?
Yeah. Eventualism.
Yeah.
That's what it was called. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely thought that the doppelganger thing was more of like a multiverse thing.
Me too.
Which I might have been overthinking this movie.
Well, dude, we're in multiverse. Like, we've been dealing with multiverses in movies for the last 10 years, and now it's like on our minds.
I thought, like, because they would like close their eyes and then they would like like become that person. So I was just thinking like maybe it's like an alternate reality of what was happening.
True. There was that moment where that woman, that like they had like that 3 alternate realities going on, almost like a Donnie Darko thing where they would reset and show you it in a different path. And then you see her sitting at that table, seeing her doppelganger, and then there was like almost like a mental projection to change spots.
Yeah. The guy does it at one point.
Yeah.
He sees his doppelganger, follows him back to his house.
That's right.
And then he like closes his eyes, and like all of a sudden you're now in the doppelganger's space.
Right.
And then he even says like, "Oh my God, I'm having an affair with my own wife," or whatever.
Oh my God, I'm having an affair with my wife.
That's
so
right.
I thought I thought it was still him, not just someone that looks exactly like him.
Right.
So that's where I got like, oh, maybe it is like a weird multiverse that's like converging.
Right.
In this small town.
It's one of those things, man. One of these, we'll watch this movie. We go into these things blindly a lot of times when we watch these movies. I got so many VHSs at my house. It's just not even worth reading the back. Just put the thing in. And you go into it and you start thinking you get it. You then go read the IMDb description. You're like, oh, okay, that's what was going on.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's just simpler, yeah.
It's a simpler description. You're like trying to overthink it, but like it's not much to think
I think,
about.
the other thing that like drew me into thinking it was like multiverse was the languages thing.
Yeah, that's right.
They kept like resetting the same scenes, but he'd be speaking like Japanese or Spanish or I think
Italian.
I looked
up, Italian.
And then like some weird like ultra. What would be the word? Like ultra condensed version of like how you would speak, like the whole like when they're generic statement about having a good time or whatever.
Imminent sustenance.
Overly dramatic statement regarding upcoming meal.
Ooh, false reaction indicating hunger and excitement.
And that was with the wife situation, and then they had like the exterminator, which we haven't even talked about. But like he would go into the houses, and he was like banging all the women in town. The exterminators, like think of like is it Dale from King of the Hill? Is the exterminator? Yeah. Think if Dale was going around as like this like sex god in your neighborhood. Like it's really strange.
Yeah,
but when they
figure.
but right. But then they'd go in and have these conversations. But it'd be like if you and I were talking, instead of me going like, "Hey Sean, how's it going?" It's like Penelope, high tide. And then
whale blanket.
It's cigarette shoelace, and they'd be like, oh, cigarette shoelace.
Yeah.
For me, Green Bay shuffleboard.
Sanity wedlock, sodium bypass.
Wigwam. Gypsy landmine. Calculator revised landmine.
Zygote. Sheet rebound.
Zygote.
So like that was like that going on, but then on the inverted, when he was talking to that wife situation, it'd be like passive conversation,
right?
And then it'd be like convincing argument,
acknowledgement,
acknowledging, and that was like their conversation. Or the bed situation where they're laying in bed and he's like intimacy, and he's like convincing arguments,
promise of future intimacy. Yeah,
it only would work in a marriage situation because they're trying to prove that it's this like repetitive cycle that just constantly happens, that you might as well just be saying that.
Yeah, and it's great because like they show him like in the office setting and he's talking normally, and then as soon as he walks through the door, it's like this whole other language with your spouse, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. And I felt like the different languages kind of, I don't know, because in a way they still understood each other.
Right.
But in my mind, it's almost like, maybe you're with someone, but you're not on the same level. You're not hearing what the other person has to say, what they're trying to say, but they always acknowledged the fact that like he'd be talking in Japanese and then she'd respond like correctly.
Right.
So I don't know if that quite works, but.
Hello?
僕だ。レスターが心臓麻痺で亡くなったよ。
Oh my God. When?
1時間ほど前だ。
Did somebody call Shelley?
ああ、病院から連絡した。
Wow. So now what?
Well, I think, to play with that, because you pointed out when we watched the movie, and it made it obvious, like, once he finished writing the speech, him and his wife were talking in or in English to each other that we could understand. But what you're playing into it is that I think that he was trying to portray is that he might be struggling, and he's trying to write the speech, which the interpretation of his multiple language thing was that he's trying to figure out the best speech, like by it being like what speech pattern works is like a weird experimental way to express that. But no matter what he's doing out in the world, he could talk it to his wife, his partner, his person that understands, and they are able to understand them as like a support group that's available. See what I'm saying? Because every time he'd call her, it's almost like if you were to call and be like, oh my God, I'm panicking, shit's fucking crazy, oh my God, ah! And she's like, it's okay, sweetheart. It's the same scenario, but he's like speaking very fluent Japanese.
Yeah.
and she responds though in English as if like she'll literally say stuff like, I understand what you're saying, like literally. And it plays on a lot of literal stuff like that because that's why they hinted at that like piss like a racehorse sort of thing. It's like, hey, we're about to go literal on a lot of stuff. Like here, we're just going to play the literal card. And that was, so you lose it for a little bit. And then we get those language barriers and stuff. So anyways, it's an interesting way to like carry on conversation. And also like, and to be honest with you, it doesn't feel as experimental these days, the way that they made that film. It came out in 96 and like give it till 2003 when we had like Eternal Sunshine and all those, anything that Charlie Kaufman wrote in like that early time period, adaptation, hell, Synecdoche. Like if you saw Synecdoche and you went and watched Schizopolis, oh my God. First off, what did I just say? If anybody knows what the hell I'm talking about.
Synecdoche?
No, it's Synecdoche. Like Synecdoche, New York, like that film that he made.
It's spelled completely different though, right?
I can't remember now, but it's spelled. The only reason I know this is because I know somebody who's from that area, and it's actually the name of a place. I thought it was made up. That's how world traveler Jess and I is, I guess. I found that out years ago, though, guys. Don't trip on me for that. But basically, that film is like a confusing pile on top of each other, which you get the point of if you're paying attention to. Then go watch this. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a Blink-182 music video.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it, like the sped up like thing, and like just turning the camera sideways for no reason. It's just, it has that kind of hokey.
Well, like coming in 1996, you had like Spike Jonze coming up, and you had like that late 90s music video style coming in, where they were doing like a Beastie Boys video on like a fisheye on a rooftop or in a supermarket, And that is exactly where this comes from. And then also too, while we're talking about it, Wes Anderson's Bottle Rocket came out, I think, the same year as this, but the point is that Wes Anderson, Soderbergh, and some cats I can't really remember right now off the top of my head were making this style of films in their like college days and stuff, and now it became the face of indie cinema in the early 2000s, where you got like the explosion of Wes Anderson and the explosion of this like whole new indie scene, and that echoes from what happened like in Austin in the early 90s, that echoed what happened back up in Park City and Sundance in like the mid 80s and all that. So like it's a direct reflection, and it's something I like to point out, of supporting indie cinema on such a high level that then we get a complete change. And to even carry on with that is Everything Everywhere All at Once just won a bunch of Oscars, blowing things out of the water. It's almost seeing this kind of thing happen on a higher scale again.
It has similar feels. Again with like a multiverse kind of feel. And then like very cheap, easily done effects, but that are effective for the storyline. I mean, they're pretty cheap in this one because it was made for $250K. Like that's a random fact. Made for $250K. It only made like $10K in the box office, but whatever. I didn't like half time these things don't even make it to the box office, so whatever. But also too is back then try to make a CGI donut, and now go follow Blender Guru. It's the first thing you learn how to do. Free.
And it's kind of like, also with that, just a side reference, is a hilarious reference in that movie to me. When I saw the donut, I'm like, they did that on purpose. They had to, right? Everyone learns the donut first.
Everything bagel.
Everything bagel. Everyone learns how to make the donut in 3D first, so it's the obvious thing to do, because if you're a 3D artist, you're like, I see you, Daniels. And just like learn all this stuff. Like we did this, we're doing the same thing they are. We just don't have that millions of dollars. We're learning everything on YouTube.
YouTube U.
YouTube U. Shoot, they're gonna put up walls at something like that. You have to pay money to get on YouTube. Well, they're getting there. Hey, YouTube, we love you.
We're here.
We're here.
We're here for you.
We're here for you. So like some other stuff. Let's talk about aesthetic and style a little bit. Like we've talked about like camera movement and stuff like that, but like, and then maybe some Wes Anderson references, but like aesthetically, And stylistically, there's a couple things like, weirdly enough, this almost has a direct echo, in my opinion, on like Office Space that comes out in like 1999. Not necessarily saying that was a reference, but it's just like the zeitgeist that we're feeling.
Yeah.
People are losing their minds in Office Space. Hell, they did in The Matrix too, in like 99 too. Like there's a lot of that over the top, people in cubicles, forced in that world, not necessarily full on the same way as it used to be. So it's like looking into a realm where like they tell that story about them buying Rhode Island and turning it into a mall.
The federal government announced today that in an effort to eradicate the national debt, it will be selling the state of Rhode Island to a group of private investors for a reported $18 billion. The investors plan to enclose the entire state with an all-weather roof and turn it into the world's largest shopping mall. When asked for comment, a White House spokesperson would only say, well, at least we didn't sell it to the fucking Japanese.
And I'd said, like, dude, what would it even be like if we had made a sequel to that film in like this modern day where malls are dead and there's just a whole state that's just a dead mall?
One indoor mall.
It's just one giant indoor mall. Like there's those kind of weird references throughout the whole thing that are only 90s, like that time period. And
Yeah.
it's a good catch of that too.
Yeah, because at that point, malls would have been like the place for people to hang out and go shopping and
Right.
shit. But now it's like, why would I do that with Amazon? I can get same day delivery.
Right? Well, then even think about the phones. Like there's literally a running joke in that whole thing that he's receiving a phone call from that entity that wants him to become the mole or whatever.
Right.
And they keep saying there's somebody else when they call. Now, that wouldn't fly if it was a cell phone world. It wouldn't be the same joke that you'd be able to apply. You wouldn't be in the same office scenario. You wouldn't be getting line calls in necessarily, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there are still places out there that have that stuff, but like if someone was trying to get you to be the mole, they wouldn't be calling the office phone. They'd be like trying to get a hold of you on your cell phone or something else sketchy. The internet.
Right, yeah.
Oh, by the way, the internet was barely in this movie. I don't know what's going on. It's like 5 years old or something. So all the timelines that I even wrote down here is that we have the Office timeline, the exterminator timeline, the interview timeline, the runner timeline, which is our bare ass dude. And those are kind of like the big ones. And then they all kind of interlace with each other a little bit. Like how the golf ball thing interlaced with every time you got home.
You barely, even if you blinked, you'd miss it.
Yeah.
It happens at like a very specific conversation each time. And that's almost like a
Yeah.
a good link between like what, 3 of the stories at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's almost like he's knocking a golf ball out of his dimension into this dimension. It's really strange because they're like they don't even know where it comes from because he hits it from a golf course and then it like appears in a neighborhood and they all like look at it but then ignore it because life keeps going.
Yeah,
Dude, there's so many things in this movie. We were talking conversation. I want to go back to that because we talked about the home language, talked about the neighbor just now. And it's something about that where like every conversation they have is just so blunt about him like banging that dude's wife and he's like cool with it.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. How are you? Fine. Is your wife coming over tonight? Because her big ass always leaves me satisfied.
Nice of you to mention her. She enjoys sex with you much more than she does with me.
I'm sure she says that to all the men in the neighborhood.
You may be right about that one.
I'll see you later.
Okay.
There's a lot of conversations where someone's like hears that someone's banging their wife and it's like a joke. Like that one guy's like, I wonder what that's like about his own wife. Oh, someone else is banging my wife.
Looks like he's about to bang your wife. Like, I wonder what that's
Oh,
like.
I wonder what that's like. There's like no anger. There's just like a weird like I don't have sex with my wife, but I'm also not mad about it.
But going back to like the neighbor too, because we're talking about how at one point he's talking, was it Italian or was it Japanese to his neighbor?
I think it was Japanese at that moment.
And the neighbor still understands him.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with that? I feel like it was, the wife is supposed to be
That's
the
a
one
good point.
understanding no matter what language he's talking in,
That's
but
a
then
good
the
point.
neighbor also understands.
Well, then at that point, it makes me think that we're coming out of his head. We're kind of in his head a little bit, and he thinks that he's kind of lost in his own language, but people can actually understand him. That might be the play on it.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know.
Yeah, they never really explain it. There's a lot of things that are
It's
just
making
happening.
me schizopolis-y.
Right.
Wait, what is happening? Is that it? And I mean, that
multiple
might be
voices in your head, like schizophrenia. Yeah, maybe that.
That could be it, but also too is like trying to connect the dots too much on this film could be a dangerous fact too. Even though we're doing an all right job of keeping it loose, but then you're like, mate, what is the purpose of that? And then we're like, aha, that's That's old Steven being like, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah, just making you think there's more.
Yeah, he's like, I've already written like 7. That movie's 40 years old. You're still coming to my movies, right? Like, chilling, dude. Yeah. So, anyways, what else we got here?
Going back to the Exterminator timeline too. I did like the kind of like meta-ness of it because you see the film crew. He like talks directly to the film crew when he's like getting an offer from I guess a different production.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was so meta that he actually left the camera crew that's making the movie to go to another camera crew making a completely different movie.
Yeah, where he's like more of the hero, and then they just keep randomly cutting back to
like
action shots where he's just like going into houses and beating up like that.
He's like an anti-hero or something, ripping the tags off the mattresses. And that dude's like doesn't even see the camera. He like tackles him like, "Don't stop!
Look at this! Fucking total disregard! Fucking total disregard! Federal government, state and fuck!" Hey, wait! Hey, come on! What? Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Son of a bitch is after me! Hey, get him off of me!
That was pretty good. There were some pretty solid moments in this movie that you were like, oh my god, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, and it's stupid references like in the 90s, we were all talking about don't remove the mattress tag. No one talks about that anymore. Yeah. But then it gets into this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like reminded of such a silly it's illegal to remove them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's like these weird like wives' tales or whatever they call them, like old maid like whatever, I can't remember the weird like term that they made up for them, but just made up things that like people would just make up to maybe even keep your kid from like eating soap or something.
Sure. It's not an idiom, is it?
I can't remember. It's like how they say if you cross your eyes too long, your eyes will stick that way.
Sure, yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But yes, fourth wall breaks were happening a lot with our exterminator. Because that was part of the game, and he was basically telling one camera crew to fuck off while the boom guy's like in the shot. That was pretty fun. Yeah. Then let's talk. But that gives me. I literally have it here. Let's talk about Elmo's dick. Right. Elmo is the exterminator.
Yeah.
So apparently our exterminator not only is seducing every woman in town, and they're on like a list, and he's getting also brought onto this production because he's like so popular with women that he gets brought on to be this vigilante, and then he can like request women at his realm or whatever.
Yeah.
But like there's like this weird vibe going on that you don't catch until like very closer to the end whenever he's in like the interrogation room. But like when he goes into like the Photoshop and like that, or he doesn't go in there, that old man goes in there and sees the pictures, and they're like apparently that he sees something and it gives him a heart attack.
Yeah.
And then like when he's in the interrogation room, so basically he unzips it and those guys are like, but like there's something hilarious about the idea that, wait, is this like an amazing penis? Like it's so good that women woo, but it's so terrifying that men are terrified of it.
Right. Yeah.
It's a weird like concept of like what is our projection of like what's it mean to have like a really nice dick? Does it mean that men fear you and women desire you? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like over the top?
Probably, yeah. Because like, yeah, what is it? Like at one point he's taking selfies and there's like a desk blocking it, but you could be taking like dick pic selfies.
That's right.
Which I think is the case.
That is because those are the pictures that she's developed. She goes and develops.
But I was kind of confused because she develops them and then also grabs them, but so does Lester, and he has the heart attack. Was there like 2 copies?
Well, what I was thinking is when we catch up with him taking the dick pic, that's actually like a future moment after Lester had seen the pictures. So it's just kind of a reference that when he finds the camera in the house, I'm assuming, because everybody just has their like Polaroids sitting around in the 90s on the kitchen table, I guess, that he just grabs it and like gives himself like a couple like pictures and puts it down.
Yeah.
And so when Lester's just doing his typical Monday night drop off for the weekend pictures, I guess, it's the 90s. That's what people are doing.
Yeah.
And he goes and sees it, and there's a couple dongs slipped in there, and then it gives him a heart attack.
Yeah, which kicks off like the entire story because now the main character now has to write like the script or the speech.
Yeah.
For that, was it for Lester originally?
Lester
was going to write it.
Lester was going to write it for the event or the Adventism like church leader.
Right.
And he dies, and so then he has to write it. But then dude's doppelganger, because. And then like the guy that runs the church, his wife leaves him to go get with the doppelganger, and so there's like a weird crossover happening, and that's like the only crossover is like that weird like middleman, which then makes me think that this movie might even be a helping reference like The Big Lebowski, because there's two doppelgangers and there's one like big head person in the middle of them that's like has been confused sort of thing. I mean, that's not exactly what the premise of The Big Lebowski, but there's like some vibes in there where there's like that confusion taking place where like, I didn't do this, but this is the triangle that it's created.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there's something fun in that.
Yeah.
There's something fun in that.
Yeah, I kind of like, now that we're talking about it, like the fact that the Exterminator kind of kicks the story off, but then also ends it. It was kind of a cool little loop around to connect his story in.
There's something else too, speaking of that, because everything loops into his nice self. And we got our bare ass dude, and he actually has the t-shirt, so he's basically playing title cards to the whole thing. Yeah, he's got title card here, and he's got a title card at the end, but then he's just like making his way through all this, like he's kind of connecting all of the scenes, like as if you're like fading to black or whatever, or scene 3 or whatever. But it kind of gives me an idea if we ever shot something like that. Yeah, when we remake Schizopolis, coming for you, Soderbergh, and we do that, I would include it even more and have him wearing the 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Yeah.
And he's like standing by the bell box when she's opening it.
There's also like the interview guy, the interviewee guy, that he's kind of part of that timeline because the naked dude's just like running around in the background.
And he's giving like weird exposition narration that isn't necessarily needed, but it kind of helps you understand that this thing's just weird as fuck.
Because it's about like the eventualism thing, so it's just got like this random way to tell the story, and then we're cracking up that he's like in a park, so like a lot of stuff's happening in the background, right? Yeah. Including a naked guy or Pooh Bear, and he has a t-shirt on, but he rides a bike in the background. They pan past and then they stop on the interviewer, and then all of a sudden he's there until like midnight. And then, like he's talking about like a dog laying in diagonal,
telling you how to properly set up a dog. But it's one of those things where then you realize you're like, wait, has this guy just like been doing an interview for like 15 hours? The sun has went down and he's just like still on it. Like what's going on here?
Still in the park.
Yeah, he's just still kicking in the park. There's a lot of moments like that throughout this film.
And so at this point, we see him exhibiting diagonal characteristics as opposed to horizontal characteristics.
What does that mean?
Haven't you read my manual?
I mean, we could talk to you about this thing forever, and I feel like we've covered a lot of really cool stuff that should get you a chance to go out there and check it out. But I don't even know where this thing's streaming, if it is streaming anywhere.
Yeah, if we find it, we'll pop it up.
Yeah, we'll pop it up. But like, if you could find this movie to watch it, great, awesome. If you can't, I mean, we're gonna pop up some images for you, and maybe we start the Nerd Rat black market. I'm just kidding. We're not gonna do that. That's too much damn time and effort. But yeah, Schizopolis. It was a fun movie. If you like this series that we're working on, it's just something we're trying to do. Sean and I get caught up in talking about movies a lot, and we go, why aren't we putting a mic in between us? So we wanted to give it a try. So, I mean, let us know.
We're going to try to pick, random movies, stuff that we haven't seen, but also potentially do this with like music videos and short films.
Yeah.
So if you guys have anything that you're like, fuck, this movie is crazy, these guys need to see it because hopefully you've seen the rest of our videos. Some of our music videos are weird and wild. We love that shit. So if you have any, what's the word?
Suggestions?
Suggestions.
There it is.
Leave them in the comments below.
Yeah, and I mean, seriously, this is just a good idea to kind of lead into it. But we like the weird, the strange, the crazy. Not necessarily trying to get like all body horror and stuff. We just like the off-wall stuff. Think like Donnie Darko. If it was a comedy, we like a lot of stupid shit. You know what I mean? Like
it kind of is. Yeah.
It's got if you turn it the right music at the right times. It's like that synth guy's like playing synth at the wrong time. Like someone's like, Billy's dead. I want you to be with it's fucking so good. Anyways, we're gonna keep doing this. Give us some suggestions. We love movies. We love you guys. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in.